In this video, we're going to cover a breakdown, a refurb, and then a rebuild of a high lift jack. So if you like what you see, please subscribe, share, and like. And if you have any questions or comments, leave those down below. The only tools I needed: 2 1/2-inch wrenches, 1 5/8, 1 11/16 wrench, pair of cutters. This is a diesel. This is a big punch. A punch that has a flat tip on the end. It's hard to see. I just use the channel locks for pulling the cotter pin on the foot, and just a small hammer. To start the process, you're going to want to clamp the jack down to a sturdy table or something to make sure it doesn't bounce around. Reason being is we're going to punch out this pin and this pin. If you notice, mine is bent. I just picked this up at a yard sale and I couldn't pass up the deal. $40 for a genuine high lift. And all I'm going to have to do is invest a couple bucks into a rebuild kit. But this is the pin we're going to start off taking out, then this one. Okay, so we're going to go ahead, take a punch and a hammer, and we're going to back out this pin. It's a squiggly one. There we go. Then you're going to remove this locking pin. Put this to the side. I'm going to move this locking pin. Put this to the side. We might be able to save this by cleaning up, wire wheel, polish it up. Although now seeing my bent retaining pin, I'm going to invest into a rebuild kit, which is probably the smartest thing to do. At this point, remove the retaining spring. Once again, grab your punch and remove that. I'm going to remove the larger pin. And the spring. Now that we've removed the 2 climbing pins and its retaining pins and springs, we can go ahead and flip the entire jack over. And what we're going to do is remove the foot retaining spring, or I'm sorry, we're going to remove their foot cotter pin so we can take the foot off. And actually at this point, this whole assembly, of course it's not doing it now, will slide up and down. And I'll show you that in a moment. take your cutters, pull out the cotter. Go ahead and remove the foot. And at this point, we should be able to slide the whole assembly right off the shaft. There we go. So now the climbing assembly is off the main shaft. Go ahead, set this aside. Clean up, paint as you wish. We're going to be attempting to paint this a little bit later. Next will be the disassembly of the climbing assembly. For the next phase of this disassembly, we're going to put the unit into a vise, and we're going to be removing these 3 bolts here. The lower bolt is going to be a 1/2 inch. And the assembly comes off just like that. We're going to remove this bolt for the jack handle assembly, and that is going to be 5/8 on the one side and 11/16 on the nut side. So the jack handle assembly is a 2-piece, and you line it up just like that, and it's retained in with this pin. And since it's inside the main shaft, or if it's inside the main assembly that rides up and down on the actual part of the jack, this is held in place that way. So there's no actual retaining thing that retains this pin in. Don't lose it. We're down to one last bolt, and that's this. I believe this is 1/2. This is indeed a 1/2 inch. Pull this out. It's a little tricky. Wasn't able to get it on film very well, but this is the part that the reverse or downward setting is. The spring sits up into the actual housing. I only saw about this much of the spring, only about a 1/2, 3/4 of an inch. The rest of this was sitting inside. All right. This is a high lift jack, completely disassembled, ready to be sandblasted and then repainted, reassembled. I'm also going to go ahead and order a rebuild kit from High Lift to replace the 2 riser pins, 2 retaining pins, and the 2 springs. Since I'm going to be repainting, I'm going to be removing the stickers off the jack. Now, some people might be worried about the fact that the manufacturer stickers will be coming off during the painting process. You can do a couple different things. You can tape this off and try to salvage it the best you can. I heard somewhere that if you contact High Lift, give them the model number of the jack you have, they will actually send you replacement safety stickers. I'm going to test that theory over the next couple days. While I just put the second coat of primer on the jack pieces, so while that dries, I'm going to go ahead and say that if you are just rebuilding your jack to the point where you're not going to repaint it and you just want to freshen up all the moving parts, you can go ahead and order that rebuild kit either from High Lift itself or off Amazon, which I did. I found it for I think between $18 and $19. I'll go ahead and post a link down below. So if you are just doing the rebuild, you can go ahead and skip the painting step, obviously. And if you're going to customize your jack and paint it the colors that you want, you can go ahead and follow this walkthrough. I'm going to go ahead and paint mine green to match the Jeep. For the paint on the jack, I'm going to use Farm and Implement paint. Supposedly it's a little bit more heavy duty and will hold up to the wear of off-road use. So I'm going to use the primer for the first few coats, and I'm going to then shoot the green to match the Jeep. Alright, so as my thoughts were confirmed, I contacted High Lift for replacement stickers, and they came through. They were able to give me my new lifting head model number with capacity ratings, as well as the jack handle danger sticker, and then a free decal. Start the assembly, we're going to basically just work backwards, starting from the last step we did and then working to the first step we did. What I'm going to do now is take this spring, stick it into the jack housing, the jack head lifter, along with its retaining bracket. Meanwhile, I'm also going to just lubricate the riding surface. So I went 1 or 2 coils down, pried it back gently with a screwdriver, put this locking pin assembly down through the top, and then pivoted it in underneath the spring and then gently let it go. now I'm going to lubricate. I'm now going to lubricate this surface here where the reverse mechanism rides on. Whoever decides wants to shoot it, there we go. Got a little zealous with that, but that's fine. I'm going to go ahead, put my bolt back in, and snug that up. I believe that is a quarter or half. Yep, it's a ½ inch. Okay. At this point, I'm going to put the jack handle assembly together. I'm going to lubricate both sides of this that run on the inside of the handle. I'm going to take the pivot pin, put it through the bottom hole. Oops, went all the way through. Okay, there we go. Alright, now with the handle ready to go back in place, we can go ahead and hold the handle assembly in place and slide it this there. This is the 11/16 nut, and I believe 5/8 bolts. Snug it up, and we're good. Okay, at this point, we're going to take the lower climbing assembly, hook it to the lower part of the pivot off the jack handle. I'm going to take the bolt, put it through, flip it up on its side. Tighten this down. These are the ½ inch. Butterfingers. Snug tight. Okay. At this point, we can go ahead and put the jack assembly onto the shaft. Now, I'm still on the fence on whether or not I'm going to repaint the shaft of the jack, only because the jack assembly is going to ride up and down, so I don't know how the paint is going to fare. At least on the outer edge, I might try to hit the center part here, but I'm not totally sold on it. The only other part that I really plan on painting right now is the jack handle. So what we're going to do right now is put the jack assembly onto the shaft. Okay. Now we're going to put the jack assembly, and what I'm going to do is lay it on its side and slowly feed it through. Making sure for it to go in both the upper and lower housing that it decides it wants to go. Okay. What you want to make sure you do is make sure the lower housing is running on the inside of the race. It's kind of like a groove cut out for the lower part. So just make sure that is inserted before you put this shaft through. Or you'll run into what I just did, is the shaft won't run perfectly through it. It'll hit the top and won't go in. So you gotta make sure that the jack handle is in this position. It gives this housing enough play, or this piece here enough play to pull up and then go inside the jack lift, or the lifting housing. And that way you can put the shaft through. The next step, note to self, don't fall in the same trap I just did. I put this all together, put the foot on, and then found out that this little guide here was above this notch. So it was actually up in here. So I had literally just pulled it off the top, unbolted this, finagled it, got it back down underneath this, and then slid the whole assembly back on. So just be careful of that, something I ran into. You want to make sure that this is underneath that little ridge. Something to take note. On the jack foot, one side is longer than the other. You want the side that's longer underneath this lift assembly. So basically you want the long side right underneath here. And that's how we're going to put it on. Probably not the greatest practice, but what I'm going to do is reuse this cotter pin. It's a little rusty, it's a little worn, but it looks overall in decent shape. I don't have anything this big. This is a pretty beefy cotter pin, so I'm going to go ahead and reuse it. Like I said, I'm still on the fence on whether or not I want to keep the jack shaft in the current state it's in. I might repaint it. So, I mean, it's as simple as really just pulling this pin, pulling the leg off, and propping back the climbing pins. So we're going to reuse this. So what the instructions seem to say is these little races that the pins ride in, go ahead and lube those up. I might take a rag with some WD-40, the lubricant that comes with the kit, and lube those up. I don't want, they say to try to eliminate getting lubrication on this part of the shaft. On the outer edge, up here, or I'm sorry, right here and here, they say to lubricate on this part, but not on the climbing part, because you don't want those dowels sliding in there. So I'm going to take a little bit of lubrication here. Grease up those races here. Paper towel wasn't working so well. Stuff smells just like WD-40. So with the kit comes this little packet of lubrication. It smells just like WD-40. We're gonna go ahead and set both springs from one guide to the other. Hopefully without shooting them out. Okay, here we go. And what you want to do is make sure that the climbing pins are facing up, away from, so you want them so the arrow is kind of like this. Go ahead and put them in. Okay. Alright, there's a correction to what I said earlier in the video. The springs go above the pin. So what I did was I put it below the pin and it wouldn't ratchet. Now the jack ratchets perfectly and operates the way it's supposed to. So what you're going to want to do is make sure you put the spring above the pin. So that way it pushes off this into the shaft. I made that mistake. So this is correct. They say that they want you to center it the best you can between the two retaining walls. So hitting that was a little bit harder than I was expecting. I could probably get away with a little bit more, punching this through a little bit more. Now I did nick it a little bit, so I might touch it up with a little bit of paint, but this is going to be a used jack, not a show jack. I hope you found this how-to helpful. If you have any questions or comments, leave those down in the comments below. And if you like what you've seen, please consider subscribing, sharing, and liking my videos.